welcome to the fourth episode of Treoir Conversations with Guidance Counsellors in Ireland podcast, brought to you by the Institute of Guidance Counsellors. I'm Catríona Rodgers, President of the Institute of Guidance Counsellors, and I'm delighted to bring you this brand new series that is all about diving deeper into the world of guidance counselling and the challenges facing students and educators alike. Today we're joined by a range of fantastic guests to discuss connections for guidance counsellors who are supporting members of the traveller community to find their pathway. So we're joined by Sian Mooney, the National Coordinator of the Yellow Flag Programme with the Irish Traveller Movement, Bridget Kelly, the Manager of the Traveller Apprenticeship Incentivisation Programme, and Sinéad Campbell, the Traveller Education Officer with ATU. Sian, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Great, thanks a million, Catríona. So my name is Sian. I'm the National Coordinator at the Yellow Flag Programme. We'll get a little bit maybe into what we do later, but we're situated within the Irish Traveller Movement and we work with primary and post-primary schools.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us here today, Sian. Bridget, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Bridget Kelly. I'm the Manager of the Traveller Apprenticeship Incentivisation Programme. Delighted to be here today.
And we're delighted to have you. Thanks very much. And then Sinead, last but not least, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, so my name is Sinead Campbell. I work in the Atlantic Technological University, otherwise known as ATU, as a Traveller Education Officer. And I'm also an IGC member and delighted to be here today.
Thanks, Sinead. And I have to actually thank Sinead for bringing the idea of this podcast to ourselves here in the IGC. As Sinead said, she's a member of the IGC and we would love to hear from our members who have an idea for a podcast. So please do get in touch. And well done to Sinead for identifying this excellent panel and for making this podcast happen today. So well done. Really appreciate your help and support. So look, we'll get started. Sian, I think you were going to start off with yourself and you're going to maybe give us a little bit of an oversight into what the Yellow Flag Programme is.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Catríona. So the Yellow Flag Programme is a practical 8-step high-impact model. It was founded in 2009 and we work with primary and post-primary schools. And I suppose the kind of aim of the programme is to embed inclusivity, diversity, and anti-racism practice into both the school environment, so the interpersonal piece, and also then at a kind of higher institutional level, policy-wise within the school. And so we work with the whole school community, so that's teachers, pupils, parents, guardians, broader school community, so that could be local migrant projects, local traveller and Roma projects, to really embed the 8 steps. It's very kind of similar, I suppose, as a model to the Green Schools programme, in that we're an award scheme. So when a school successfully completes the 8 steps, and that happens over a 2-year period usually, they're then evaluated externally and then they're awarded their yellow flag as a kind of a recognition of their work towards progressing diversity, inclusion and anti-racism. So far, since 2009, we've worked with 136 schools nationwide and growing. So that's about 50,000 students plus and about 5,000 teachers. So just in terms of, I suppose, what the actual 8 steps are, because you might be wondering. So as I said, it happens over a 2-year period, and usually in year 1 we cover steps 1 to 5, and that's with the support of our amazing development workers, Karen Shields and Jenny Hayden. So we look at first getting started and keeping track, making sure that everybody in the school community is aware of the programme and that we're all coming along on this journey together as a whole school community. We then set up the diversity committee, step 2, so that's a group that really drives, we always call it the kind of wheels and the engine of the programme within the school, and that's a group that's really driving the programme in the school, and it's generally made up of teachers, could be HSCL, could be SNAs, principal, board members if they're interested, and then of course the most important part, which is our students and pupils, parents and guardians, and then it could be representatives from local faith group or a local intercultural project, whatever that might look like and is relevant in that school community. And they really, really drive the programme in the school. We then have the intercultural review, which is a survey that goes wide out across the school community to all of those groups, as I mentioned before. And we're really looking to see what's happening within the school in terms of diversity, inclusion, anti-racism, what's working well. That's really important to identify those points, because there's so many schools that are already doing amazing work, but what are the challenges as well? So are there racist incidents happening within the school? Do students feel included? Do parents feel included? Have they engaged? Have they experienced racism? Have they reported it? What happens if they did report it? And so forth. And we gather all of that information and we present it back, which forms step 5 that happens usually at the end of the first year, which is the action plan. And that's really kind of to look at, okay, so what can we do to address those challenges to make school a better place for everybody? And it kind of simultaneously kind of throughout the first year, teachers are undergoing CPD. So we have a number of kind of CPDs that we run. So the most, maybe one that people are most familiar with on the program is the Introduction to Intercultural Awareness CPD. So that's really to provide a basis upon which to start the kind of intercultural journey. There's a lot of self-reflection involved. And then really how to manage racism where it happens in schools, the kind of historical aspect of racism in Ireland. As we know, it's not new. So it's really to kind of look at that and bring everybody up to, I suppose, the same starting point. And then we have a lot of self-led training as well that happens. We have then in year 2 going beyond the school wall. So that's reaching out and inviting in within the community. Classroom work, which happens throughout the programme. So teachers really exploring the curriculum and how to bring interculturalism into both the formal and the informal. And then we have your diversity code and anti-racism policy, which is a very integral part of the programme. Every school that has a yellow flag will have an anti-racism policy. And so that's really looking to the institutional piece where, yes, there's interpersonal changes happening, but there should be a policy that says how a school feels about racism and also then how to address it. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, a big nutshell, albeit, but yeah, that's it, the nutshell.
So it's 8 steps, and it traditionally would take 2 years. And in year 1, you would hope to maybe reach the end of step 5 before you start into year 2. Great.
Yeah.
And then just one piece that jumped out at me, there was a real whole school approach that you suggested. So there would be like students, there would be teachers, the homeschool community liaison. Would the guidance counsellor be a part of it too, usually?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The reason why, I suppose, Catriona, we say that it should be whole school is that it isn't just, I suppose, one person's or one teacher, or, you know, could be somebody from a minoritized background as well taking the lead. It's actually the job of the whole school community. So actually guidance counsellor is a really integral part of that. If they're interested and would like to take part, they're a wonderful asset in the diversity committee because they have a lot of links within the community generally as well. And yeah, I suppose there's a lot of values that would align with what we're doing that guidance counsellors would generally hold as well. So yeah.
And we work as part of a whole school guidance team. So this language that you're saying is just music to my ears. Like a whole school approach is where you get buy-in from your senior manager right down to the students that you're working with. Like you need that for an initiative to be successful. And then just on the figures now, I took a brief note, but did you say 50,000 students you have already had contact with?
Yeah, 50,000 students. So that's a kind of that would be kind of all of the students that we worked with in all of the schools. And I suppose we take it that as 136 schools that we worked with, and some of those are quite big. We have one school with 1,200 students.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a lot of work happening within those, and yeah, we kind of hope to see it grow even more.
And how do schools get involved? Like, is it nationwide?
It's nationwide, yeah. So every year we have an open application process. So schools who'd like to apply can kind of start thinking about, really thinking about it now, or if you haven't already, to kind of take a look at our website. We actually have a register your interest available on our website, which is www.yellowflag.ie/get involved. So schools can read about what the application process looks like, and also find our guidebook, which gives some really good insight into the actual operation of the program. So schools might want to think about maybe who their link teacher is. So the link teacher is generally the person that we would liaise. There would generally be 2 of those within a school as a support system. And we kind of liaise with those teachers to really roll out the program in a school. So schools generally will apply then in March. We make our selections during April with announcements then in May. Unfortunately, Catriona, we're generally very, very oversubscribed. Which is both a good thing and a bad thing, because we'd love to work with every school that's interested, but because of our funding structure, and we're very, very limited in our funding. For example, we have 77, I think I checked this morning, expression of interest. That's before the application's even open. And generally we're only able to take about 10 to 12 per year, and that's really just down to, yeah, the funding that we have just really isn't enough to support every school that wants to get involved. But we're working really hard to make sure that further down the line we can have more resources available to be able to support more schools, more school communities. Yeah.
And would you still encourage schools to express their interest? Because from my side of it, I think that would be really positive. Like when you go back looking for funding, look at how many schools wanted to get involved and we couldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, I suppose, an argument that we would make every year when we have discussions with potential funders and policymakers as well, that there's a real drive and a real need for a programme like the Yellow Flag, because we really are one of a kind in what we do. We're the only programme in Ireland that does what it does. And we know that, I suppose, racism is something that's experienced probably more frequently, even more in the last couple of years, just with some of the rhetoric that's happening there. And that extends to school. We know that from our surveys that students are experiencing racism at very significant levels. And that goes across the board for students as well, you know, and that includes Traveller and Roma, just to say that as well. It isn't something new necessarily, and it's been experienced for a really long time. But yeah, we see that as something that's on the rise, and schools are really struggling to know how to manage that for a couple of reasons. One is that, you know, the initial teacher education that's there doesn't really focus on really solid anti-racism education for newly qualified teachers. And also then that your CPD, there's not really any anti-racism elements there at the minute, and that really say this is how racism should be managed in a school. And also there's no mandatory framework as you would have with your anti-bullying policy or Cinaltis, that says how a school should manage racism, or that there really should even be a policy in place. So there's a lot of gaps that are very very obvious, I think, that we're kind of filling at the minute. But really, for there to be that kind of broad impact, it should really be mainstream to all schools, so that every young person has the opportunity to attend a school that's kind of making really concerted efforts to challenge racism and progress inclusion as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure you speak so well on it. And then just for your, like, what's your main positive change that you've seen, or like what is the main benefit for the students or for the school from your view?
Yeah, I mean, we have kind of 4 kind of key outcomes that we look for, and they're not kind of things that maybe teachers are actually thinking that they need to kind of deliver on those outcomes, but it actually happens very naturally as part of the 8th step. So maybe just to give an overview of those. So it's a school community that promotes values and celebrates ethnic and cultural diversity. That's really important. You know, students feel themselves within the school building, within the curriculum. And that their culture isn't something that they feel they have to hide when they are in school, which happens all too frequently, unfortunately. And then a school community that takes a visible and proactive stand against racism. So we're having really open, valuable discussions about racism in school, and that we're actually starting early. You know, there's no, some teachers will say to me, oh, well, you know, how do we actually challenge racism? How do we talk about racism to junior infants? There's absolutely a way to do it. And then students from diverse ethnic and religious backgrounds feel included and integral. We know that students will do better in terms of their well-being, but also in terms of educational outcomes where they're in a school that they do feel valued and that they feel part of the school community. And then lastly, the teachers can identify teaching and learning strategies that harness key aspects of the curriculum to embed that intercultural education. So that's, you know, that isn't just your kind of standalone intercultural days. That's making maths intercultural in very simple and tangible ways. Science, English, looking at the curriculum, how can we do better? And so they're the kind of 4 pieces. But I think in terms of those outcomes and what actually happens within the school, how that looks like in the school building, I think one of the most powerful pieces for me anyway, looking in and working with schools, is actually building that community support. So it's really important that when we're talking about schools, that we kind of don't treat them as just this on the peripheral of the community, that they are so, because they are little microcosms of what's happening in broader society, and that we're bringing everybody in. So that really includes making those connections with local projects, be it Traveller, Roma, migrant, faith groups. What is relevant in your community and who can you engage with, and inviting them in to the school space, because I think sometimes schools can feel like these closed off spaces, you know, behind a door, and it's not necessarily accessible to some people, or they may not feel that there's a place there for them. And that can be because maybe they had a poor experience in education, or they don't feel like, you know, them and their community have a place there. Actually, we need to really reflect and say, okay, so people might not be engaging with us. Why is that? And to really challenge the kind of concept of inclusion, to say, well, you know, we need to self-reflect, and what can we do better to bring them into the space and make it a safe space and a brave space as well for them. So that's kind of one of the pieces that I think is the most powerful when you start working with a school who, you know, they may not have parents in, there's not really any engagement there. There's no links with those community groups to lean on for advice, support, you know, cultural exchange, all of those lovely things that happen when you open up a space like that. And so to then 2 years down the line, seeing a school where, you know, regularly they have people coming in from the community to speak to students. They have parents. Parents are a huge resource that are very, 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 very underused, I think, in terms of what they can actually bring into a school space. They have a wealth of information, and even in terms of that cultural exchange bit as well, parents are wonderful. We had a lovely project going in a school in Navan last year where they had two wonderful parents who came together. One spoke Farsi and one had Cant, traveller language Cant, and they came in to do a story time once a week with their primary school. They had readings from a Farsi book and one with Cant incorporated mixed with English. And we had stories up on the board and the English translation, and the parents would come in, and the traveller parent and the Iranian parent worked together then to develop that workshop, and it was just beautiful. And it just really showed that, you know, these two kind of communities coming together, and the children absolutely loved it. That's one very, very small example of the many kind of projects that happen within schools. But that was kind of facilitated by the local migrant project and links to the local traveller project of this kind of coming together, you know, just really, really lovely spaces. So yeah, that's just one example. Yeah.
It sounds fantastic, Sian. So I just want to check my understanding. The Yellow Flag project is for primary, and is it also for post-primary?
Yes, we do primary and post-primary. Yeah.
So anybody who's listening today, if they wanted to get more information, where would you signpost them to?
Yeah, so you can go to www.yellowflag.ie, and we're also on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Yellow Flag Program, on all of those platforms. So they can have a look there. Our guidebook is also available on our website, or you can go to yellowflag.ie/get involved, and that has a link to the register your interest. In March, if you're on the register your interest, we'll send you out the application form. And there's kind of info on kind of what to consider before applying. So lots of kind of pre-information for teachers that they might need. Yeah.
That sounds fantastic. So the key message is do register your interest, and that's going to open in March.
Please do. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. And, you know, you're very welcome to kind of email with any questions. And as well, my email is on the website. It's just sian@itmtrab, sian@itmtrab.ie.
And then even when I was listening to you there, I'm going to have to follow up with you after this, like for CPD, we're always looking for meaningful CPD. So it sounds like perhaps we could link in on that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Bridget, I'm going to hand over to yourself. I wonder, would you mind telling us a little bit about the Traveller Apprenticeship Incentivisation Programme, please?
Thanks very much. The Traveller Apprenticeship Incentivisation Programme was actually launched in 2023 as a pilot programme, as the first ever Traveller Apprenticeship Incentivisation Programme. The programme itself is funded by the Department of Further and Higher Education, Research and Innovation, and the programme is traveller-led, and it's also hosted by the Irish Traveller Movement. And the Irish Traveller Movement itself is a membership organisation which is made up of 30 to 32 traveller organisations, and their mission statement is to work for greater equality for members of the traveller community. The programme and the aim of the programme itself is to support travellers in accessing apprenticeships, and that's new apprenticeships, existing apprenticeships, or pre-apprenticeship programs. And we also offer financial support as well. So we do have bursaries available to members of the community that are actually doing apprenticeships or in existing apprenticeships. And so the bursary itself is of €3,000 to members of the traveller community that actually wants to take up apprenticeships, as I said. And this would be used, well, you know, when applicants do apply, they do say they use it for travel or, you know, educational supports or training, or, you know, so it has to be all linked anyway to the apprenticeship programme. We also have another bursary as well that we try to enable employers to take on travellers to do apprenticeships. So we do have a bursary for employers for €2,000 as well. So there is terms and conditions to all the you know, there's a criteria for both bursaries, but we do have a bursary as well for the travellers applying for the bursary, and for employers as well. The programme itself is traveller-led. We have 2 outreach officers who are travellers, and the manager, myself, I'm a traveller woman. And also, I think it's important as well to mention the drivers behind it as well, our ITM coordinator, Bernard Joyce, but also Andrew Chappell, who is the Enterprise and Employment Coordinator with the Irish Travel Movement. So that kind of gives you a bit of a background to the programme itself.
It sounds fantastic. So there's a couple of bursaries available for students who want to apply to help them with the cost of doing the apprenticeship. Did I pick that up
Well,
right?
Yeah, so it's basically a bursary there to offer support, financial support for anyone that wants to do apprenticeships. So, for example, we would have some people that would apply for apprenticeship and they would use the bursary for travel costs, or it could be tools or equipment that they need as part of their training, doing on the training that they actually do as part of their apprenticeship program. So that's what the bursary would be used for. And they have to, the apprenticeships themselves has to be SOLAS approved. So we'd need all that, that information as well, as part of the criteria.
It can be hard sometimes to find like an employer to take you on when you're looking for your apprenticeship. Like, what are the challenges that are facing traveller students when they're looking for apprenticeships?
Well, I can give you an idea. Say, for example, last year we had 163 expressions of interest from members of the traveller community that actually were looking to do apprenticeships or pre-apprenticeships, or who were currently on an apprenticeship programme. And 66 of those actually received the bursary. And 22 of the 66 have employers, but only 7 of those employers applied for our bursary. So we believe that for various reasons, we think that it's either the applicant didn't let their employer know that they're members of the traveller community, or maybe the employer themselves didn't want to draw negative attention to the applicant themselves. So we do know that there is big challenges in regards to trying to, for employers for members of the community trying to take on, to get employers to do apprenticeships. So this is a big piece of work that we're currently working on. So, for example, we'd have people that want to do the apprenticeships, that have their apprenticeships in order, and then if they go out then looking for the employer, just say, for example, in hairdressing, they're looking for a hairdresser to have ETBI, have the apprenticeship available, and then they're looking for the hairdresser to, as part of that apprenticeship, they find it extremely challenging. Not just hairdressers, but it is across other areas as well. So we do have an officer, an outreach officer, and ourselves, we do work with, trying to work with the bigger employers in the public sector. But we also are working as well, and we're doing a big piece of work in regards to trying to target employers locally, and trying to link the apprenticeship and their local employers together to see can we try and build that connection there. But it is a challenge at the moment. So but as I said, it is an area that we are working with, and we are linking it in with the National Apprenticeship Office as well. We've highlighted to them as well the challenges, so we're looking to do some work with them in regards to trying to build better relationships with employers and get them on board, and to see and work with them to take on travellers to do apprenticeships.
I think that advocacy is so important because it is hard to find employers to take on apprentices. So of course it's going to be a major issue. So you're talking about how you overcome some of those barriers by making the link with the local network of employers. Was that one?
Yeah, that's right. Yes. So as I said, like we'd have people doing apprenticeships in say for example in the Galway area, and they might need an employer in their area. Obviously they will, because some people don't have transport to go further afield. So we do try our best to get the information of employers. We do give it to the applicant themselves, and from time to time we do offer the one-to-one support and make the calls ourselves to the employers. But we always say to the applicant, we can't guarantee that they'll get the employer. However, we do offer that one-to-one support, give them the information. We also have the SOLAS FET list of employers that take on apprenticeships in their local area. So we share that information as well with each applicant, and then we just take it from there then. But as I said, the uptake hasn't been the best. However, there has been a slight increase based on the 2023 stats. But we do have 7 employers, as I said, that have applied for the bursary. But we are still missing out on other employers.
Yeah, but in fairness, you're going into year 3 now, and so it was 163 applicants, expressions of interests.
Yeah.
66 bursaries were awarded, and then 22 found employers. Is that it?
163 applicants of expressions of interest, and 66 have received the bursary from us, and it was seven then that would have actually were employers. And also in 2023 we had no traveller woman that was on an apprenticeship, where in 2024 we now have 4 traveller women who are currently doing apprenticeships. And actually I can actually give you a breakdown of that, where we actually have 1 traveller woman that's doing mechanics, we have another that's doing hairdressing, and we also have 2 then that are and 1 an accountant technician and 1 hairdressing as well. So again, there has been slight progress as the years have gone on. We put a big emphasis into trying to target traveller women as well into apprenticeships. But again, they're finding it a challenge as well around the employer part, to get employers on board to do apprenticeships. But there has been slight progress there, and our emphasis is to focus more in that area as well, to try and target more traveller women and to get them into apprenticeships.
I love that kind of inclusion and trying to avoid or remove barriers or reduce barriers. So if we have a guidance counsellor who's listening to this podcast, and maybe they're working in a second level school, or maybe they're working in an FET centre, and they have a learner in front of them from the traveller community, what advice would you give to them? How could they help them?
Well, my advice would be similar to what Sian had said earlier, that it's very important, firstly, that they have a good understanding around traveller culture, and also that they are aware of our programme, the Traveller Apprenticeship Incentivisation programme. And I suppose just to making those connections, with local traveller organisations. And I can actually give you a prime example as well, Catriona, of a student that, or an applicant that did apply for apprenticeship, were doing their leaving cert in a school, and it was actually the career guidance counsellor that made contact with ourselves, who actually knew about the Traveller Apprenticeship Incentivisation programme, and it was actually a positive experience. And what happened was they reached out to ourselves, said that this young woman that is interested in doing an apprenticeship. And so it was the Irish Travel Movement ourselves, it was the National Travel Women's Forum, and we all met, and the employer as well. We had an employer on board that was quite willing to take on this young woman. And with all the wraparound supports that was given from, it's not just the career guidance, it's about other people getting involved as well. It's the traveller organisations and the people and employers. And this young woman now is currently doing her accountancy technician apprenticeship with the employer, and it has been so far a positive experience for her.
Fair play to her. That's a good story to hear. Yeah, gorgeous.
And I suppose, and just going back then as well to your point, I suppose for us it's about having that wraparound support, having the awareness around the Traveller Apprenticeship Incentivisation programme. Launched our Traveller Apprenticeship Incentivisation webpage, so it's currently up on our website at the moment, and we're on Facebook as well. So if people want to reach out or to want to contact myself, my email is bridget.k@itmtrav.ie, and we'd be happy to assist and pass on any information and to the guidance counsellors in relation to the bursaries that we have available, and be delighted to meet any of the career guidance counsellors to talk about the work that we're currently doing.
Do you know what? I'm going to be reaching out to everybody now, following up for webinars and CPDs and sharing connections. It's so wonderful to have this conversation and to learn more and to share your knowledge and experience. So thank you so much, Bridget and Sian. Sinead, I'm going to hand over to yourself now. So Sinead, would you be able to maybe share your view? What are, for a higher education perspective, what are the main routes there?
Really interesting pieces from Sian and Bridget. And before I move into that, and I have a little screen share on board, I suppose I forgot that I came across the Irish Traveller Movement. ATU has funded 3 of the schools in the region to undertake the Yellow Flag programme. We received funding from the Higher Education Authority under Path 5. And we also have other funding there from Path 3 and Path 5, which supports roles like myself as a traveller education officer, but other wraparound supports that Bridget was talking about, one-to-one supports, but also information and that piece there of just that extra bit of information and linkages between guidance counsellors and schools and that. What I like about the Yellow Flag programme in particular is that it's very structured and supported. It's over 2 years, so it's not like an information session. It's very supported by Karen Shields, in our case, the development worker, and you can get a real sense that it's embedded in the school and that community linkage. So ATU, for instance, will be linking more closely with some of the schools as part of that funding. And one of the really nice things in the school is that a lot of these schools are already doing lots of work, and this is a way for them to capture what they do already in a really structured way so that they can celebrate it and acknowledge it. And that's one of the really nice pieces that I see out of it. So in terms of entry routes into higher education, and Bridget's mentioned one of them already in terms of the apprenticeship side of things. We're already familiar, I suppose most guidance counsellors are familiar with the Leave Insert and the CAO route into higher education. We also have a lot of UK and Northern Ireland applicants, and that includes members of the traveller community, a lot of whom would have studied in the UK system. So I suppose everything that I'm talking about here today, what I'm saying is the access offices throughout the higher education institutions have information and support available depending on which entry route you're choosing for members of the traveller community. There's advanced entry and transfer applicants, and that's what Bridget is talking about. They start their apprenticeship for a lot of the craft apprenticeships, but there's other apprenticeships like in ATU, we have the insurance apprenticeship up and running. And transfer from other university campuses is also something that we are familiar with, you know, particularly with accommodation crisis and all of that. So we have, of course, mature applicants who are over 23. We have a number from the traveller community who engage in higher education. And we also have, I suppose, extensions to part-time SUSI-funded degree programs now, which is a very welcome addition. And we also have online and flexible learning options that have become more popular in recent years. We have great relationship with our further education partners and a lot of transfer from QQI courses from the ETB sector into higher education. We have EU applications, and guidance counsellors will be familiar with the DARE applicants and HERE applicants, where there's reduced points to support additional entry into higher education. In terms of the supplementary access, a lot of the higher education campuses also offer access courses, which are an introduction to higher education and provide qualifications in themselves, but also give a taster of what higher education is like and are a gentle entry into higher education. So that is a very popular route with the traveller community as well. And in some of the campuses like ATU, we have additional supports around maths, for instance, an enabling maths course, which provides an additional route if you are concerned about your maths results after the Leave Insert. And other things like scholarship entry routes, and that they're a common entry route as well amongst the higher education institutions. So one of the, I suppose, if I move on to some of the supports then that are commonly found in higher education. So here I'm given what it looks like in ATU. We have 9 campuses in total, and across 4 of the campuses, we have access officers, dedicated access officers, well, 5 of them. And the contact details are here. But so this would be a typical, in terms of the access office, they would be able to provide information to prospective students or current students on academic writing supports, maths and engineering supports, supports with assignments and different projects as the year goes on. And particularly in that first semester, it's a really intense time trying to grapple with timetables, independent learning, you know, an unfamiliar campus and all of that. And the Access Office is always a key contact for students from the traveller community and other marginalised groups. We offer a lot of support around understanding of fees and understanding of financial supports that are available on the campus. And this is really crucial, especially in semester one as well, in first year, around, you know, particularly to make sure that you have the SUSI grant, back to educational allowance, information on scholarships and bursaries, such as the 1916 bursary, which is a really important one for members of the traveller community, and the Student Assistance Fund as well. This year, for instance, across the campuses, the higher education campuses nationally, students were able to apply for additional accommodation funding if you were a member of the traveller, roamer community or care experienced. So there's information like that that changes from year to year, and it's great for guidance counsellors to contact the access officers, but it's also great for the students themselves to create that, develop that relationship, and when they need a deferral or an extension or information on something, that they have a contact point there. So other typical services in higher education campuses are healthcare and counselling, the careers office, pastoral care and chaplaincy service, and we do have a dedicated disability service in higher education campuses. There's just one other piece of information then, I suppose. What I'll be circulating at the end of this are links to each of the access offices across the higher education institutions nationally. So each of these have dedicated websites. They have a lot of information on it, but they also have contact details, and they're very, all of the offices are very approachable and very engaged in supporting members of the traveller community into higher education. A lot of them, like ATU, have particular projects underway under Path 3 and Path 5, and we're always open to partnerships with schools and FET centres as well. I'm also including some links here, like for the Irish Traveller Movement. Another national organisation is Pavy Point and the Involve Youth Project. There are other national projects as well out there. If you feel that you need some sort of input yourself as a guidance counsellor, or I suppose that additional support for students that you're supporting, there is the Traveller Counselling Service. The National Traveller MABs do wonderful work. The likes of St Vincent de Paul and University also offer great bursaries in the education field. So one of the pieces that has been mentioned so far is bringing traveller culture into the curriculum. Just to mention that the NCCA did great work on putting together the Traveller Culture and History Research Report, and that's a great reference document for all schools. Anne-Marie Collins did, some of you might recall, she did a talk this year as part of College Awareness Week, and that her resources are linked there on the College Awareness website. But she also has her own social media platform, and she shares ideas and tips and hints as to how to include traveller culture and history in the classroom. So that's just some of the pieces there, and I'll be sharing those links later on.
Wonderful, thanks, Sinead. So those slides that you showed there on screen, I have them. Is it okay for them to go out to our membership base?
Yes, yeah.
And the links that you said as well. So we're coming towards the end of the podcast. I'm going to ask you all the same question. So just if you could pick one thing, what could guidance counsellors do to help learners or students, like across the lifespan? So it's not just second level, it's literally across the lifespan. What one thing could guidance counsellors do to help learners from the traveller background or from the traveller community? So Sinead, do you want to go first there? One thing.
No pressure there.
No pressure.
So I suppose one of the things that I found really interesting when I did the PDIP initially in guidance counselling was the idea of the bell curve, and that we're somewhere there all on the bell curve, you know, between the 30% and the 70%. So, you know, for me, if 50% or 55% of Leaving Cert students feel they have the ability and interest to move into higher education, that means that, you know, the same proportion from the traveller community would have that ability and interest. So the things that are missing there are opportunities and supports and I suppose that acknowledgement that we all have that ability if it's nurtured and facilitated through different opportunities in higher education as well on our side.
So it's almost like setting expectations there, Sinead.
Yeah.
And that you're...
And I suppose I think that that's where the guidance counsellors have that, they hold that ambition for members of the traveller community and for other marginalised groups. And they also have that advocacy piece as well in terms of advocating for them within their school community, but also within the wider education community.
Thank you, Sinead. So then, Sian, for yourself, what one thing could guidance counsellors do to help learners from the traveller community?
Gosh, I mean, there could be a big long list. But just to maybe kind of revert back to what Sinead was saying, it's that definitely create an environment where self-belief can actually flourish, and sometimes that does kind of involve a degree of self-reflection in terms of your own practice as well. Now, we're so lucky that we have so many amazing guidance counsellors working across the education sector. But one piece that comes up all of the time is that there are links created with parents, and that parents feel that school is an accessible place for them also as a parent. I think when you're supporting young travellers into whatever progression they might choose after school, that the parents are also able to see that. Because, you know, family can play such an integral role, and I think it's really important to bring them along as well, and to just really make sure that even, I mean, in your physical office space, that it reflects the diversity of the students that you might be working with as well. So whatever kind of materials that you have in there, that it's reflective, you know, and that, you know, that's maybe not always the easiest thing to find, but I think there's a lot of resources, you know, even across the TAIP as well. Like, there's a lot of resources available there that could be displayed. I don't know, Bridget, you can probably speak to that much better than me. But to include that in your space when you're inviting people in. Yeah.
Thank you, Sian. And then, Bridget, to yourself, what could guidance counsellors do to help learners from the traveller community?
Again, similar to what Sinead and Sian has kind of said already, you know, I think it's about having that safe space and that safe environment where travellers can actually come to the career guidance counsellors. But I think as well, it's just about them having a clear understanding around traveller culture, and also to have the information to hand, like the TAP programme, for instance, you know, all the information we have around the apprenticeships, the bursaries, and I suppose it's making the connections with the local traveller organisations, but again, making the connections with the parents as well. In regards to, you know, their education pathways, and that they're brought along as well. And I suppose it's about being visible as well in regards to promoting travel culture. You know, like what Sian had said earlier, it's like, you know, even sharing images, or like we've posters, and the Irish Travel Movement have posters, but local traveller projects have posters as well around traveller ethnicity or whatever. So I think it's about being visible around some of that as well. But as I said, look, it's important as well to acknowledge all the work that the career guidance counsellors are doing across the country. And I suppose, again, just to say, like, if they wanted to reach out to ourselves at any time to talk more about our programme, we'd be happy to do so. And also we'd be happy to deliver workshops to any students that they're working with as well, and to talk to them more about the TAP programme, apprenticeships, and the bursaries that we do have available as well.
So I want to thank you all for participating on today's podcast and for being part of today's conversation, sharing your knowledge and your experience. So thanks to Sian Mooney, the National Coordinator from the Yellow Flag Programme with the Irish Traveller Movement, to Bridget Kelly, the Manager of the Traveller Apprenticeship Incentivisation Programme, and Sinead Campbell, the Traveller Education Officer with ATU in the Northwest. For further resources, please visit the IGC website or get in touch with our head office. We would love to hear from our members. So join us next time on Treoir, Conversations with Guidance Counsellors in Ireland.